a nation at the crossroads. In the 21st century, America stands at a crossroads. The nation that once led the world into the atomic age now finds itself wrestling with the question: what role should nuclear power play in our future? For decades, nuclear energy has carried both hope and fear. Hope, because it promises almost limitless electricity without choking the skies with carbon emissions. Fear, because the very atom that lights our homes is the same atom that can destroy cities. As climate change accelerates, wildfires rage across California, hurricanes slam the East Coast, and droughts parch the Midwest, Americans are asking a difficult question. How do we power our future without destroying our planet? Once, nuclear power seemed like the obvious answer. But after years of accidents, controversies, and political battles, the U.S. nuclear dream nearly died. And yet, today, against all odds, it is stirring back to life. This is the story of America's nuclear power revival. A tale of ambition, fear, decline, and rebirth. The birth of nuclear dreams, 1940s, 1960s. Our story begins during the darkest days of World War II. In secret laboratories across the United States, scientists raced to unlock the power of the atom. The result was the Manhattan Project and the birth of nuclear weapons. Hiroshima and Nagasaki proved that splitting the atom could end wars, but it also left humanity haunted by its own power. And yet, even as the mushroom clouds rose, a different dream took root. Could this terrifying new force be used not for destruction, but for creation? In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower gave his famous Atoms for Peace speech at the United Nations. He envisioned a world where nuclear energy would power cities, not bombs, where reactors would turn deserts green, fuel ships, and make electricity too cheap to meter. By the late 1950s, America built its first commercial nuclear power plant in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. It was a modest reactor, but symbolically it meant everything. America was not only the world's first nuclear superpower, it was also leading the charge in nuclear energy. Optimism soared. The 1960s ushered in what many called the golden age of nuclear power. The golden age, 1960s, 1970s. The Cold War was raging. The space race put Americans on the moon. And back on Earth, nuclear reactors were springing up across the United States. By the 1970s, dozens of nuclear power plants dotted the American landscape. Engineers spoke of a future where almost every city would run on nuclear power. Newspapers wrote about a world where electricity would be virtually free. Families living near nuclear plants were told they had nothing to fear. Children toured reactors on school field trips. Nuclear energy was sold as safe, clean, and modern, an antidote to smog-filled skies and oil dependence. And for a time, it worked. Nuclear plants generated massive amounts of electricity. They gave America energy security in an uncertain world. But in the shadows, cracks were already beginning to form. The shadows, accidents, and fear, 1970s, 1980s. The optimism of the nuclear age did not last. In 1973, the Arab oil embargo shocked America. Gas prices soared, lines at fuel stations stretched for blocks, and suddenly energy independence became a national obsession. Nuclear seemed like the perfect solution, but as more plants were built, costs ballooned. Protests erupted. Environmentalists warned about radioactive waste. And then, in 1979, disaster struck. At 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, a partial meltdown occurred. While the release of radiation was limited, the event shocked the nation. Television news showed images of panicked families fleeing the area. Trust in nuclear power crumbled overnight. And then, just 7 years later, came Chernobyl in the Soviet Union. The explosion of Reactor 4 sent a radioactive cloud drifting across Europe. Though it happened thousands of miles away, the images of burning graphite and abandoned cities burned into the American psyche. To many, nuclear power no longer represented the future, it represented danger. The nuclear winter, 1990s, 2000s. The 1990s brought what experts call the nuclear winter in America. No new plants were ordered. Projects stalled. Public opinion soured. Politicians found it safer to avoid the word nuclear altogether. Meanwhile, new competitors arrived. Natural gas, cheap and abundant, flooded the market. Wind and solar began their slow but steady rise. Nuclear, once the darling of the energy world, was now seen as outdated, risky, and too expensive. The U.S. still operated many reactors, but they were aging. Engineers kept them running, but few believed America would ever build new ones again. It seemed the nuclear dream was over. America's energy challenge, 2000s, 2010s. But as the new century dawned, America faced a growing crisis. Climate change. Coal plants belched carbon into the sky. Hurricanes grew stronger. Wildfires destroyed homes. Scientists warned of catastrophic warming if humanity did not change course. The U.S. turned to renewables. Wind turbines spun across the Midwest. Solar panels spread across rooftops. But there was a problem. The sun doesn't always shine, and the wind doesn't always blow. That's when some began to look again at nuclear power. Unlike coal, it produced no greenhouse gases. Unlike wind or solar, it ran day and night. Could nuclear be the missing piece of America's clean energy puzzle? The revival begins. 2010s, 2020s. In the 2010s, a quiet revival began. New technologies promised smaller, safer, and cheaper reactors. Companies like NuScale Power developed small modular reactors, SMRs. Reactors that could be built in factories and shipped to sites. Bill Gates invested in TerraPower, a company working on advanced designs that use nuclear waste as fuel. Meanwhile, the U.S. government began offering support. Climate policies recognized nuclear's role in reducing carbon emissions. And despite delays and cost overruns, new reactors finally came online at Plant Vogtle in Georgia. The first new reactors built in the U.S. in decades. For the first time in a generation, Americans began talking seriously about nuclear power again. The geopolitical angle. But the revival isn't just about clean energy, it's about geopolitics. China is building reactors at a rapid pace. Russia dominates the export market for nuclear technology. If America falls behind, it risks losing not just energy security but global influence. Nuclear power is more than just electricity. It's a tool of diplomacy, a shield against energy dependence, and a statement of technological leadership. In an age where energy is power, America cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. The roadblocks to revival. Yet, the road to revival is not smooth. Nuclear plants remain expensive to build. Financing is difficult. Waste disposal remains unsolved. The Yucca Mountain project in Nevada was canceled after decades of debate. And public opinion is still divided. For every American who sees nuclear as the future, there is another who fears another accident. If nuclear is to rise again, it must overcome not just engineering challenges, but political and social ones. A new dawn, the future of U.S. nuclear power. And so, America finds itself at a turning point. The atom that once terrified the world may now help save it. Nuclear energy alone cannot solve climate change, but without it, many experts believe America cannot reach its net zero goals. The future may not look like the massive plants of the 1970s. Instead, it may be a network of smaller, modular reactors scattered across the country. It may be nuclear fusion, long a dream, now inching closer to reality. But one thing is clear: the story of nuclear power in America is not over. In fact, it is entering a new chapter. The revival of nuclear power is more than a story about technology. It is about America's identity, its ability to lead, to innovate, and to face its fears. Once we feared the atom. Now we may learn to trust it again. The question is not whether nuclear power has a future in America. The question is whether America has the courage to embrace it. Because the atom has given us a second chance. And second chances don't come often.